Good day, everybody. Today's topic is Inside U.S. Immigrant Tracking. I'm Sam Shihab with the law firm of Shihab Burke, and with me,
Brian Burke from that very same place.
We practice immigration law throughout the U.S. and throughout the world, as a matter of fact. We focus on employment immigration law and family immigration law. We spend half an hour on Monday and half an hour on Wednesday at 6 o'clock to discuss a topic of interest and take questions after that. We always ask you, if you have a moment, to drop your questions at immigrationquestions.us during the week, and we will take the interesting one and we will answer them first. But if you forgot, you can most certainly join us and ask your questions on the spot, and we are going to get to as many questions as possible. Now, this is really an interesting topic, Brian. Inside U.S. immigrant tracking, does the U.S. government track immigrants?
Yes, certainly.
And to what extent?
More than you think and more than you fathom, and that's the point of this conversation tonight. It's to answer that question, how does USCIS, how does the government know? How could they know? And the answer is there's about 10 different ways. Yeah.
Just to kind of put things in perspective for everybody, the relevancy of this quick discussions we're having is when people file applications and make representations or put sworn statement before the government, don't assume they do not know some or a lot of the facts you're sharing, because oftentimes they do.
Yeah.
And they can fact check you, and you have to be truthful. And if you are trying to cut corners, it can get back and bite you.
Yeah.
So it's very important to understand that the U.S. government track you. Now, what is the ways? What happened? Why? Just give us what's the ways the U.S. government track immigrants?
How do they get information from you? I think the most common one is your prior immigration filings.
Yeah.
When you file an application with the government, they keep it. They keep their immigration records forever.
Yes.
So, if 10 years ago you applied for a visa and you said ABC, and 10 years on you're applying for a green card and you say XYZ, they've been known to basically go back and check your answers and basically say, well, 10 years ago you told us this, and now you're telling us this, what gives?
Yes.
And either their central premise is either you were lying then or you're lying now. Tell us what's going on.
Yeah, Brian, since September 11, the U.S. government made an absolute commitment never again to make the mistakes that the government made, which allowed individuals to enter the United States to harm this country.
Yeah.
And our visa and immigration screening system failed miserably.
Yeah, they didn't sneak across the border. They were here on B visas. I think there's one on an F visa. I think there's somebody here as part of the ESTA, the visa waiver program. So,
yes.
Yeah.
And they were interviewed at consulate, and they were never, their intent was never discovered.
Yeah.
They entered and they overstayed their visas, and nobody talked to them.
Yeah.
And people say, why the U.S. government gets upset if I overstayed my B visa a little bit? Well, because some bad guys overstayed their B visa and done some terrible things. And therefore, one of the things that the U.S. government look for is you to respect the law. Yeah. And they track you closely. And the most impressive way they've started by tracking you is through the combination of the 20 agencies that created the Department of Homeland Security in 2002, Brian, created this inner communication between the agencies to share information.
Yeah, so there's the initial question of, well, how would USCIS know? No, okay, well, you told USCIS in this past, but if you gave information to another government agency, there's a reasonable chance that USCIS or Department of State or whoever you're dealing with in immigration knows about it because you told somebody else, right?
And the other system that they have is the U.S. Visit Biometric Data Collection System. Yeah. This is introduced to collect fingerprinting and share information to tie data, to connect data here and there through fingerprinting together. Yeah. Even if there was time where people changed names and did funky things, and the system never caught that. Yeah. Now that's almost impossible because of the biometrics collection system. Yeah. And it's quite advanced and it's quite active.
Yeah, speaking more to that information sharing thing, I mean, it's growing in recent years. Recently, they announced that IRS would be sharing its data with ICE for immigration enforcement. Yes. USCIS E-Verify information could be looked into to figure out whether somebody is working.
But let's pause on the IRS for a second, because this is a major change recently where the IRS entered into a memorandum of understanding with the Department of Homeland Security that they're going to share information about the whereabouts of certain immigrants,
Yeah.
the undocumented immigrants or criminal immigrants, where the USCIS or the ICE will provide information, Immigration Customs Enforcement will provide information and give them the fact that this individual that's trying to seek information has a criminal background, is undocumented, and now they can now give them where they live, and based on the IRS filing, which is a lot of people are critical of this system because saying, well, immigrants are no longer going to pay taxes, going to affect the money coming in, which I agree, but you have to be able to use all means possible to go after bad guys, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, so hitting the next thing on the list in my book is law enforcement, law enforcement keeps records upon people, and the government, the immigration authorities have access to that as well. This is a sort of a very popular thing in the issue of student visas right now. There are lots of people out there having, getting notices from the government that their student visas have been canceled, and the most common reason I've seen, because I've talked to a lot of those people, is a criminal reason. I had a dismissed shoplifting charge, I had a dismissed trespassing charge, things like that. And even though it was a court case that came and went and was dismissed, that has now resulted in the consulate canceling people's visa stamps as well as their student visa record, the SEVIS record. Yeah.
The Consular Consolidated Database. The CCD, one of the most active, most effective database, and this database is shared with the Department of Homeland Security and vice versa. It's a two-way share. With the FBI, it's a two-way share, and other intelligence agencies. This is the database that collects information about visa application, DS-160, DS-260 information, comments made by the consular officer at the consulate when they're doing an interview. All that is accessible when you show up next time and make an interview at the consulate. All that history appears.
They share information amongst themselves. Now, one thing, Sam, we haven't mentioned. Speaking of, we talked about earlier about you giving information to the government through your immigration applications, but one of the things out there that's sort of a new ripple on that front is registration.
Yes, this is huge.
Yeah. So,
and if you don't register, it's a crime.
If you don't register, it's a crime. But if you do register, this is a special worry for the people who are undocumented in the United States. They know where to find you. So that means it's a legitimate concern. As a bunch of attorneys here, we have to advise people to comply with the law because that's like day one law school stuff. You can't advise your clients to commit crimes, and it's just sort of a rough issue, but it's something where you have to do it, and that's how they get information about you. It's how do they find you? It's they look at the information you give them.
There's a system that's come and gone. It's called the NSEERS, which is the National Security Entry-Exit Registration System. Basically, it was when it was implemented is mostly Muslim majority countries. It was a highly controversial, but also they've collected tons of data.
Speaking of electronic systems, I'm going to speak to one that's still active. The SEVIS program, the student visa program. You mentioned. I know that post 9/11, that was something they implemented to basically help better track students. But the school, in part of the student visa program, school officers, let's say you fall out of student status by not being employed. They record that in the system. If you don't attend your classes, they record that in the system. That's how they.
That's the DSO, the designated school official at every school. They go in and they log in. And they're required to enter information about every foreign national about anything that's out of the ordinary. And that goes to to ICE.
To ICE.
And that is permanent record.
And it's a sort of thing. It's just another sort of source. And speaking of, here's a great one, Sam. Searches. If you travel to the United States, they have the means and sometimes do search your devices, and they can. They don't. I mean. They can download your entire device. They will hook your device up to a machine, take it, and we'll leave that in the database for later. And they may not find anything right now, but they may find something, later on.
And this massive amount of information they just collected on you in a moment. Real ID Act. The Real ID Act, with the driver's license, you have to prove you're a U.S. citizen to get a real ID. I just renewed my driver's license 2 weeks ago, and my U.S. passport card that I carry with me all the time was handy because I didn't have my passport when I went there because I want to get a new driver's license. I just walked there and they said, Well, prove you're a citizen. Well, I'm not born here. I don't have a birth certificate. I had my that worked.
Don't feel too special. They did that to me as well. So last time I got my driver's
well, everybody,
license.
oh yeah, everybody, everybody. You know, I don't feel special, but everybody had to confirm that they're a U.S. citizen.
Yeah.
And by confirming that you're a citizen, they have a real ID that's created to track who is a citizen, who is not a citizen. The U.S. consulate tracking system, the National Visa Center also track Americans in cooperation with the FBI when there is a case in court. Let's say there is a DUI, you get an email right away from the consulate that says, canceled your visa.
Yeah.
And people call and say, I just got my canceled visa, I got a DUI, I pled it down to disorderly conduct. My visa is canceled. What happened? Another guy calls, I had a little fight with my wife, the police came in, they filed a police report. 2 weeks later, my visa is canceled.
Yeah.
All this information is collected.
You know, Sam, I know you had an interesting scenario like this, but it's not just things inside the United States. You know, we're talking about the intelligence apparatus of the United States government, the biggest and most powerful government in the world, and they can figure out things. They share information and intelligence with other countries, and they can figure out things about you that happened not even inside this country.
Yes. I mean, I have a client who lives in country 1, ended up interviewing at country 2, and was questioned about an incident that occurred at country 3, which is none of those 3 countries are the U.S.
Yeah.
At the consulate.
Yeah.
Tell me about country 3 incident, blah blah blah, and the person was shocked. We were not prepared for it. So that's all information gathering worldwide through the CIA, through the FBI, with other countries, through the European Union, all that shared. And they're tracking who's in the U.S., who's not in the U.S., who has a visa, who doesn't have a visa.
I mean, big picture for me, Sam, you know, we're a bunch of attorneys. The first thing we have to tell everybody is you have to be honest when you file your immigration applications. Because any immigration application you file, you're going to be swearing to the truth and accuracy of the information therein. Secondly, it's foolish to think you can beat, you know, the intelligence apparatus of the United States government. You know, if you're asking the question, how do they know?
Well, we just answered it.
Yeah.
That's the Inside U.S. Immigrant Tracking for today, guys. Hopefully this is helpful. We'll see you guys every Wednesday and every Monday at 6 o'clock Eastern Time.